Setting up a profitable cannabis retail. Let's talk about that. Tell me more.
Challenging one's assumptions is a good first place to start. So, one of the things that I've seen people do when they set up a new cannabis retail is they want to stock it with the things that are most exciting to them. If I look at myself, I would be tempted to do that as well. I'm into sativas. I love super lemon haze, trop cookies. If I look at what most consumers in Colorado, where I'm located, are buying, I would be doing myself a disservice if I stocked my own preference, because indica dominant hybrids, indica leaning concentrates are selling much better than sativas where I'm from. And a lot of people like sativas, so that's not universally true across all markets, just an example or an anecdote from where I'm located. But it's all the more pronounced if you're thinking about somebody who's getting into this industry because of their passion for cannabis flower, but they're opening a cannabis retail in suburban Minneapolis. If your target demographic is heads of family between 25 years old and 50 years old, and largely the people making the buying decisions for those families are going to be women, if you're stocking your store to your own preferences, you're probably missing the mark, probably by a pretty wide margin. You want to let the data inform this. There's a ton of data out there about who's buying what. There's US Census data to help inform you who is actually in the communities that you're going to be serving. So take the guesswork out as much as possible.
So where would I go to find the data on what are the buying trends of different demographics?
So there are a number of services out there, a number of data aggregators in the industry that provide that information. We're partnered with some of them, so I'd feel weird kind of calling any out. But certainly there are players that have that data available, whether it's Headset or BDSA or LeafLink. Any of these companies have information and insight into that. You can also get anecdotal with it, but it is, and just go talk to people who are running successful retail. A lot of them are happy to chat about what products are selling to what types of customers.
What should my inventory strategy be? I have never opened a store before. How much should I carry? And do you think, what's your take on that? Because some retailers, they want to carry a month. Some retailers say, hey, no, a week is okay. Let's just keep it short so I can learn. What's your take?
It depends on where you're at in the life cycle of the industry in your space. If you're planning on opening a retail in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you should probably plan on stocking every product that you can get into your store when you're opening, because there's not going to be an abundance of supply. So that's how I would start in a new market. If I was coming in past that, I think it depends on what your value proposition is and who you're targeting. If you're looking to be the budget brand in your area, then carrying fewer SKUs and moving them more efficiently is going to be a lot better strategy, because your whole business model is somewhat contingent on not having too much inventory, right? Like you don't, that's just cost that you haven't built a business to sustain. Whereas if your value proposition is that you have the most high-end cannabis products, you probably want to stock as many of those high-end brands as you can, so that when people come to your store to have that need met, you can meet the expectations you've set with your brand promise. If that makes sense. And there's a large delta in between those two extremes, but letting the data inform how you continue to reorder is really important. And I think one of the areas where people make mistakes is they'll give up on a product too quick, and then they'll eventually have to reorder it down the line when they keep getting requests for it, because they haven't enabled their team to speak to that product. I think we look at sell rates or run rates on products and we go, oh, this one's not moving, it must be a bad product. Reflect on whether or not you've enabled that product to move first before giving up on it, especially if it's something that you believed in enough to make the buying decision on yourself.
That's so insightful, and I see that so often. It's so often. Oftentimes, what we found is a product doesn't sell. It's because the sales associates aren't selling it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the product.
Nothing. In some cases, it could be location on the shelf. It could be, there are a number of factors that can influence that. But I think the leading cause from my vantage point has been that we're not giving people the tools they need to speak about that product.
How can a retailer work together with with the brands to sell through?
That's a great question. And I think it's interesting because it's one of the things that I love talking about during the seminars we do or these speaking opportunities at some of these trade shows. The people who make these products are fanatical about them. If you've ever met a head grower, they will talk to you about their approach to growing until you tap out. It's beautiful. Like they're so obsessed with the science, but also the nuance and their particular approach and what makes it better, at least from their perspective. That I would always start by reaching out to those brands or those cultivators and saying, "Hey, would you be willing to come in and educate my team on how to represent your brand?" First of all, you're doing them a service because you are going to then be representing their brand more closely aligned with how they want it represented. So there's something that they're interested in this equation as well. But second of all, no one's going to speak more passionately to their products than they are. So your team's getting it firsthand from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what makes their products better and how to position those to an end user or a customer.
Yeah, I've heard the importance of making sure that your suppliers have road game. So what is the support that they're going to give you to help to enable your sales associates to really sell through their inventory? It's so important.
Yeah, it's super important. And I've seen everything from cultivators or manufacturers coming in and doing a pop-up booth and talking to customers in front of the staff so the staff can learn via osmosis to having people come in and talk to your staff on their break or throughout the day and just inform the staff directly on how to represent the product. I think both of them can be really impactful. I think if you're going to have them come in and speak to your customers directly, you need to do something to incentivize or encourage your staff to pay attention to what they're doing. Otherwise, it can be easy for the staff to go, "Oh, they got this handled. I'm going to go do this thing."
Chris, anything more about inventory strategy that you feel retailers should know?
There's so much. But in terms of, I think we could spend a whole day, if not days, talking about inventory strategies. Making sure it aligns with your business model and your brand promise, like we talked about. But
What are
you,
some different
you,
business models that you can touch base on?
yeah, I'm happy to. We have some customers where they have really low SKU count, really small footprint stores, and their whole thing is we want to touch the most customers every day possible. We've lowered the barrier to entry as far as we can in terms of our pricing. We've made it really convenient. We've made it really easy to get in and out. And so that's our business model. We have some operators who are just so fanatical about the data that they carry a high number of SKUs, but they could tell you everything about each one of them, where they are. If you're set up to work like that and understand your business in that at that depth, then really you can do whatever you want. But I'm thinking specifically of an operator in Ontario, Highland Cannabis, and Owen there. He knows his business just impeccably. And the way that he can identify top moving products and get them reordered, and the way that he can manage it so that there's very rarely a gap between having products that are selling well and also move out the product that's not selling well so efficiently is just really something cool to see. And then obviously there are people who just want to have everything for everyone. And that's a much more difficult business model to manage, but we see people do that as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah. I
It's
think
a big,
it helps to have big backing to run that kind of business, especially because your overhead it gets so high. I think it's really, especially in the cannabis space, it's really hard to make money taking that approach right now.
yeah, I always think the business of a retailer is how many times does your money turn over? So I think of inventory as money.
Yeah.
And can you exchange money for money? Can you turn over your money 4 times in a month? 4 times in a month with lower margins is probably better than once a month with high margins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's really important to know how fast you are turning over your inventory. And I don't know that a lot of retailers do. This industry gets so and I don't mean to demean anyone. I think this industry is so hard and so difficult that a lot of times people are gasping for air before they even have that thought.
So what are the other tenets of running a successful store?
Enabling your staff, keeping your staff is hard in this space. You guys know that better than anyone. So making sure that you have systems in place that keep your staff not only engaged but happy and communicating well with the customers and having oversight in that. I think making sure you have hands-on management. And if you're more of a silent partner in the business, then stepping back and putting someone in place who is fanatical about your business is really important, because one thing that we see is a disconnect between ownership and the people on the front lines. And it's easier to have that happen the bigger your business gets. But I've seen it with small businesses as well, where employees feel like the owner doesn't care. When they start feeling that, their loyalty is to each other and to themselves, not to your business. And that's a really precarious position to be in. So staying close to your business or putting someone in place who will, and then being fanatical about it. I talk about, during our seminars, I always talk about how it's really important to have a diverse team. It's important to have cannabis specific accountants. It's important, if you've never done this before, especially to work with consultants. It's important to have people on your team. No one should know more about your business than you, though. And just because you have somebody on your team who will know about this aspect of your business, or just because you have an accountant on your team and they're going to better understand all of the intricacies of the financial situation, doesn't mean that you shouldn't know your financial situation, your inputs, your outputs, and your inventory turns like you're talking about. Maybe the accountant can do more with that information. That's why you have them on your team. But you shouldn't rely on anyone to fill in gaps in your own knowledge about your business. Be fanatical about your business.
You're preaching. And I've actually never, it's very hard for a business in general, let alone in this industry, to have a successful business with absentee ownership. It's impossible. And you mentioned that, hey, hire somebody that is fanatical. If you're not, that's really hard too.
It is.
I think that's even more difficult than if you were fanatical yourself. Yeah, I've actually never seen that work more often.
I think it only works if you're willing to incentivize that role with equity. If they've got skin in the game, I think you can make that work. Short of that, no. Because the better they do, the more attractive they are to someone else, or the quicker they tell themselves, I could do this without him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So that is so tough. If I was starting up and we talked about having extreme ownership over the business, what are some key performance indicators that a business owner should leverage when making decisions?
I like that. I like that Jocko reference there. The key performance indicators, I would say, when you're looking at your retail staff, profitability. And I think it's easy to look at revenue generation, but over discounting is such a big problem in this industry that if you're just looking at how many orders somebody puts through or how much revenue somebody's generated, you might not be seeing the full story there, because your most profitable employee is not always your most productive one in terms of the numbers. So that's, I think, one KPI to really look at. There are also some intangibles that I would consider, and this comes back to not being an absentee owner and spending time in the store. But when somebody walks in, if you don't have a designated order in which people are engaging with them, which employee is the first one up there to engage with them? Who's shying away from that? That's a coaching opportunity to really enable your staff to feel comfortable engaging with people, or to help find a better way for that employee to be contributing. So I think that that's really meaningful as well. And then how fast are people coming in and getting out of your store? From the time that they check in until the time they leave, how efficiently are you moving people through the process? One of the things that I always talk about, and this relates to like the design build of a dispensary, is people paint these stories about, oh, I'm going to have this dispensary with this couch and this TV and people are going to be really comfortable here, or I'm going to make it like an Apple store, and Apple's got a different business model. They're fine with
Yeah.
someone being in their store for 4 hours because, yeah, I was saying this just a couple hours ago, because their genius can then upsell someone from a $2,000 computer to a $4,000 computer.
Mhm.
When you're dealing with CPG, the longer that consumer is sitting in your business, the more they're thinking, today at least, I really only need that pre-roll. I don't know if I need all of this other stuff. You want people in and out. You want to, and the person standing at the register is blocking the next person from standing at the register. I would definitely track that, how efficiently I'm moving people through my business, and then how effectively our cart size is increasing by employee over time. If I'm a point to encourage my staff to upsell or to maximize each transaction, I should track that progress. My boss always calls it inspect what you expect. That's Gary's whole thing is if you have an expectation, you better inspect it. Otherwise, you're not really holding people to those expectations.
That is, you mentioned being in line and pushing people through as fast as possible. And that reminds me of how the store is set up. Is it set up for success? Oftentimes, when I go to a store and I try to visit as much as possible, and there's no bud tenders on the floor, and I'm in line, and there's a line behind me, and I'm talking to the bud tender, the cashier, and I'm just asking questions. I feel pressure to make a decision as soon as possible because there's people behind me waiting. So in that environment, I can imagine that it's really hard to upsell or really hard to dig in. Hey, what do you like? So the bud tenders in that situation, they have to be so slick and so fast and so efficient. And that may not be the best environment for everybody.
It might not be, and it might be good to have a policy of, hey, limit product suggestions when, we're at
Mhm.
this volume of people in the store, because you also don't want to frustrate people in line.
Everybody else.
You don't want the person at the front to feel anxious about, God, not everyone will. There are plenty of people out there who don't
Mhm.
care. I'm similar to you. If there was a line behind me, I'm like, okay, I got to get going right now. But the other thing that can help is training your staff to leverage the information that they have at their fingertips and working with the system that will put this information at their fingertips so that they're making smart suggestions as opposed to just scattershot. So
Mm.
if you're working with the system that tells you, oh, this is Ryan. Ryan likes Death Star. And you could see Ryan's past purchases and you could see what he's just put in his cart, being able to say, hey, I don't know if you saw those new pre-rolls from 710 Labs, but they've got a Death Star I think you'd love. That is going to have a much higher success rate than, hey, we got some new edibles in, and you're saying that to somebody who doesn't buy edibles. If you've got
Mhm.
that information right in front of you, then train your staff how to make the right product suggestions as opposed to just, hey, make a product suggestion.
Mhm.
The other thing I'd say is don't train your staff to look at how close that person is to their purchase limit so that they're not making a product suggestion that somebody can't purchase. If you've got 2 grams left to your purchase limit and I'm telling you that you should check out these apes from Free World Genetics, guess what? I'm just introducing frustration. Now I'm actually slowing things up because if I've done a really good job at selling you on that ape, now you're thinking, all right, what do I have to take out of my cart? And now we're pissing everybody off even more. Whereas I could have made a suggestion on, hey, we've got buy one, get 1 gram pre rolls. Boom, you're at your purchase limit. Here we are, we're out the door. Customers happy, people behind them are happy, and I've maximized the transaction.
That's so true. I didn't even think about the purchase limits. That's a big one.
It is. It's a big one. You don't want to frustrate people, but you have cues. In other
Yeah.
industries, they don't have that. There's one upside to having purchase limits. It at least gives you a container to fill. You're like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I've got a goal here.
So you mentioned a few features that Cova has that could help sales associates upsell. And I gotta say, congratulations. You guys won Best POS of the Year last year at the MJs.
Yeah, best retail technology. I think something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really exciting. Thank you.
So let's talk about technology. What do you guys have down in the pipeline 2025?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, looking at what we want to define our North Star, right? And our North Star has always been compliancy. Getting back to the conversation we had earlier, that's not enough anymore. So how do we make retailers more profitable? And there are a number of ways we can do that, right? One is enabling more efficiency. One is better enabling dispensaries to make product suggestions to their customers. And one is to streamline operations and make things easier for operators so that they can focus their time and energy and their staff's time and energy on what will generate more revenue. So we're working on a number of initiatives to cover all of those angles. We're working on improving our functionality as it relates to state traceability systems and giving people the ability to do more in Cova that currently they might be doing in Metric or in BioTrack to not only to streamline those operations, but also to allow them the convenience of having staff work on those problems that they might not want to provide with login credentials for Metric or BioTrack so that they can get more efficiency out of their entire staff. We're looking at tools like our e-commerce tool and how can we make this something that enables retailers to capture a larger audience and to convert at a higher rate and to set a good customer or to create a good customer experience, because I think oftentimes we look at e-commerce as a box we have to check, but that is often the first impression that your company has on a new customer. So making sure that we're putting retailers in a position where if they're using our e-commerce product, they're converting new customers out of that as opposed to just servicing their existing customer base or transient business, and really helping them make that a tool that helps drive profitability. And we're always looking at how do we improve our current technology as well, just to make it faster, more reliable, more dependable. And of course, this time of year, we're spending time getting ready for 420. I got to knock on wood. We've got a perfect track record on 420, and we want to make sure we keep that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the e-commerce. When's it live and what are the core functionalities of it?
Yeah, so the e-commerce is live in Canada. I think one of the most important things to us was knowing our lane. E-commerce is it's a Pandora's box. There's so much you can do with it, but there's also so much that can go wrong if you're doing too much. Understanding that there are players out there who are doing a really phenomenal job at the big builds and the enterprise level sites, at the sites that are truly generating SEO and all of that. We don't want to compete with that. They're doing a better job than we could. And our whole approach has always been best in class. At the same point in time, there are retailers out there who need better than what they have now. They need better than an iframe, where their products are indexed to an aggregated marketplace. And by sending people to their website, they're effectively advertising for their competitors. They don't want that, but they can't afford or they don't have time to invest into a bigger e-commerce platform. So there needs to be a middle lane. And so we've created an e-commerce product that is the functionality, the speed of the integration with the point of sale is second to none. That's been really important to us, is to make sure that the functionality is seamless, but it's not trying to be something it's not. So it's enabled for SEO. It's not going to generate SEO for you automatically. But if you're working with the team or if you have an employee that can help to truly leverage the platform to build SEO, we're not putting you behind the eight ball like you are with an iframe or one of these descendant of iframe technology platforms out there.
Got it. You hit the nail on the head too, and I love where the industry is going because it shows the maturity of the industry, where there's niches now. There's niches, sorry. And the industry has grown to a point where it's funny because we were talking about some payroll platforms, and like a Gusto, for example, they're a massive payroll platform, but they don't use their own product because they're not made for a company that has thousands of employees. They're made for a company that has 20 employees. So they use Workday. So it's just like that. And I see that in the cannabis industry more and more, which is great to see.
I think so. I think knowing who your core customer is really important.
It drives down the focus. Chris, I know we don't have much time left. Is there anything else that's happening in Cova in 2025 that you want our listeners to know?
Is there anything else that's happening in Cova this year that I want customers to know? I think one thing that is not new to Cova, but let me think of a better way to put this. In addition to all of the exciting new things that are coming to play with Cova in 2025, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that altruism for the retailer has always been center and completely central to what it is that Cova is doing. So I think it's easy when, and I've seen this with my competitors, we're working on this, we're bringing in that, we're going to add this new functionality or this new technology or this new line of business. And what suffers is customer support. And so while we're doing all of these other things, we've also added a day of support. We have 7-day support now. We've increased the hours of our support. We've increased staffing for our support so that our customers are not just getting new things to frustrate them. They're getting new things that are supported at the same level that Cova is known for providing support at. Our KPIs on the support that we provide our customers have never been better. Right now, it's an average, I think, 11-second wait time if somebody calls into our customer support line. We have almost an 80% first call resolution. And these are metrics that everyone at Cova knows because we talk about them all the time because that's how important customer support is. So it's easy to get lost in the weeds when you start adding things, and to get really excited about that stuff is great. But if you lose sight of the things that have helped you get where you are, that's when you stumble, I think.
That's beautiful. Customers come to you for technology and they stay because of customer support. Before I let you go, where can our listeners find you?
I'm in the dark right now. I should have more lights, so hopefully they can see me. They can find Cova at covasoftware.com. We're on LinkedIn. I'm at Chris R at covasoftware.com. Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll give you my phone number too. If you have any questions, call us. We're happy to chat. The other thing I'd say is and I've said this a lot, but in the cannabis space, there are a lot of people trying to be everything to everyone. Consider the options that you have for every piece of technology, for everything that you're bringing into your retail, and make sure that you're vetting it and you're not just making a choice that marks all of your criteria, but you're making the right choice that marks all of your criteria. Don't settle for the first one that checks all the boxes, because you're always going to have questions then. Get that peace of mind for yourself by checking out all of your options and making the most informed decision you can.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tommy. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app, or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.